Ma, there's someone in the glass, I said, my voice earnest. It wasn't a jest. That was the first time I saw our golden retriever, Daisy, act oddly. She was only 3 years old then, and she'd never done anything like it before. It was early November in rural Indiana, the air sharp enough to keep our windows misty until noon. Pop had passed a few months prior, and Ma was gradually learning to handle the house alone. Well, not entirely alone. She had me, Daisy, and a home packed with items we hadn't yet decided what to do with. It started on a quiet afternoon. I'd just returned from high school, slipped off my muddy shoes by the kitchen door, and was warming leftover pot roast in the microwave when I heard a thud from upstairs. I stopped. Ma was still at the cafe, no radio was playing, and the house was hushed. Then another thud, followed by a long, low moan. I raced up the stairs, 2 at a time, calling, "Daisy, you okay, girl?" No response, just more thumping. I found her in the corridor, sitting before the old full-length mirror that had been there forever, a heavy, oak-framed relic, possibly from Nana's family. Daisy had one paw pressed against the glass, touching it softly, as if expecting it to yield. She moaned again, her tail twitching anxiously. When I neared, she glanced at me, then back at the mirror, pawing it twice more. I knelt beside her. "What's in there, girl?" I asked, half smiling. I thought maybe she'd seen her reflection and thought it was another dog, but Daisy wasn't silly. She'd seen mirrors before and knew her own face. That's when I said it. I peered into the glass, and for a brief moment, I swear I'm not making this up, I thought I saw something shift behind the surface, something that didn't match our movements. A shadow, a glimmer, like someone walked past and vanished. That evening, over supper, I told Ma, "There's a man in the glass." She chuckled, wiping sugar from her apron. "Too many spooky films, kid. It's just your reflection." I pressed, "Daisy scratching at it, Ma. It's odd. She's never done that." Ma sighed. "She's mourning, like us. Let her be." But Daisy didn't quit. Every day after school, she'd rush upstairs, sit by that mirror, and paw at it. If I tried to tug her away, she'd whimper. If I left her, she'd stay for hours, eyes fixed on the glass. A week later, Ma gave in. "All right," she said, exasperated. "We'll take it down. Maybe it's frightening her, or there's a strange odor behind it." It was a sunny but cold Saturday. Ma fetched the toolbox, and I held Daisy's collar as she unbolted the mirror from the wall. It came off too smoothly, almost unnaturally. Behind it wasn't just plaster. There was a painted wooden panel. "Is this a hatch?" I asked. Ma set the mirror down carefully, staring at the wall. "I don't remember this here. Has it always been like that?" "Not that I know," I replied. Daisy began pawing at the panel now. We exchanged a glance, unsure. "Should we open it?" I asked. "Well, it's your pop's house. He grew up here. Maybe it's some old storage nook. Let me grab the pry bar." The panel groaned open reluctantly, revealing a shallow hollow in the wall, about a foot deep and 3 feet wide, lined with thin wood. Daisy shoved her nose inside, sniffing eagerly, then barked sharply and stepped back, tail wagging like she'd found a prize. Under a thin layer of dust was a small wooden box with a brass latch and hinges. Ma reached for it, her hands trembling. "This wasn't here when we redid the house. It must have been sealed up long ago." She lifted the lid cautiously, as if it might snap shut. Inside were a few items: old photographs, folded letters, a knitted baby bonnet, and a dulled brass object. The contents smelled of age, wood, and something ancient. "These are your pops," Ma whispered. "That's his brother, and that's your granddad, Walter." I watched her sort through the photos, her hands steadying. Daisy sat between us, tail still wagging, tongue lolling happily. "Daisy knew," I said softly. "She knew this was here. Or maybe someone wanted her to help us find it, Ma replied. We spent hours examining the contents. The letters, in faded ink, were addressed to Granddad from a woman named Clara, someone we'd never heard of. She wrote about a child, a vow, and losing contact during the war. One letter mentioned a secret kept for the family's harmony. Ma read it aloud, her voice shaky. If you ever return, tell your son the truth. He deserves to know his roots. I looked at her. What truth? She shook her head. I don't know. We spread the letters and photos on the living room table. Daisy rested her head on my knee, watching us calmly, almost proud. That night, we didn't rehang the mirror. Instead, Ma called Uncle Dan, her older brother in Wisconsin, and told him about the find. He was silent for a long moment before saying, You found Clara's box. You know her? Ma asked. She was our aunt, Pop's sister, or so we think. Over the next week, a peculiar story unfolded. Clara was a young woman from our town who had a bond with our granddad during his service. Some saw her as a kind neighbor who helped raise him after his parents passed, but others whispered she was more. Family by blood, though no one explained how. Why hide the box? I asked. Because of what's inside, Uncle Dan said. That brass, Granddad earned it for something he never spoke of. And the bonnet belonged to a baby that never came home. I didn't know what to say. I looked at Daisy, curled by the hearth. Do you think Pop knew? Maybe, Ma said softly. But if he did, he never told me. The days after felt quieter, deeper, like the house had grown richer. We shared the discovery only with Nana, who wept when she saw the photos, then sat quietly before nodding. I always felt Walter hid more than he showed. He was good, but private. Daisy stopped pawing at the bare wall, as if her mission was done. One afternoon, I sat with her on the porch, running my fingers through her soft fur. You showed us the truth, didn't you? She gave a soft bark, as if agreeing. We didn't put the mirror back. Instead, we built a shelf where it had hung, placing the now polished box on it, beside a photo of Granddad Walter, smiling in his uniform, and a newer picture of Daisy, proud by the panel she'd uncovered. Ma joked we should get her a medal. I said we should just give her all the pot roast she wanted. But every time I looked at her, curled by the fire, I couldn't shake the thought. Maybe some things are meant to be found, and maybe dogs know more about kin than we do. It began with the doorbell chiming at a strange hour, not late, but that odd mid-morning when most folks are working or still waking up. Daisy barked twice and dashed to the door, her tail wagging fast, as it did for unfamiliar visitors. Ma was kneading dough in the kitchen, so I answered. On the porch stood a man I didn't recognize, in his 60s or older, with neat gray hair and a long navy coat buttoned high. He didn't smile, but his eyes were gentle. Are you Eleanor's son? He asked. I nodded warily. Yeah, that's my ma. She's here. Daisy didn't bark again, just sat by my leg, watching him closely, as if waiting. I'm Victor, he said. Victor Hale. I knew your granddad. I heard you found a box behind the glass. My stomach flipped. We hadn't told anyone outside the family, not even school friends. How do you know that? I asked. He chuckled softly, not mocking, but like recalling a distant memory. News travels, and when it does, it sometimes knocks. I let him in, not because I wasn't cautious, but because Daisy, who barked at rabbits and delivery folks, stayed quiet. That meant something. Ma emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, and froze when she saw him. Victor? As in Walter's unit. He nodded. The very same. She gestured him to the dining table, and we sat as Daisy curled beneath, her chin on her paws. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden patterns across the wood. The house was still again. I won't stay long, Victor began. But if you found the letters and the baby's photo, you deserve to know. He pulled a folded paper from his coat and placed it gently on the table. Your granddad disliked talking about it, but after the war, he wrote down all he could recall. He gave me this years ago, said I could share it if the truth ever came up. Ma reached for the paper, unfolded it slowly, and read aloud. It was short, just a page. Walter had met Clara during a transport delay overseas. They weren't supposed to fall in love. She was on a task, he was shipping out, but they did. A baby came the next spring, but complications meant she didn't survive. Her name was to be Rose. That bonnet, Victor said softly, was all they had. He kept it hidden, like an unhealed scar. Ma's eyes shimmered. Why didn't he tell anyone? Because he thought it would fracture the family. Clara wasn't from here, adopted into a family that moved often. No one knew her roots. And Walter, having just lost his brother, couldn't bear to bring more sorrow home. I sat quietly, letting it settle. It was strange to learn such things about people you thought you knew fully, but the truth carried a weight that felt necessary, not heavy. And you? I asked. Why tell us now? Because your dog wouldn't let it stay buried, he said, glancing at Daisy. Some animals sense what lingers. He stood, slow and deliberate. Keep the letters safe. If you find more, look for Clara's initials. She signed them CM. I think she wrote more than what was in that box. Then he tipped his head and left as quietly as he'd come. Ma and I sat in silence for a long while. Daisy snored softly under the table. That afternoon, we climbed to the attic, unopened for months. The pull-down ladder creaked, and dust fell like a veil as we ascended. The air smelled of pine, dry and full of forgotten holidays. Old decorations, baby clothes too small now, boxes with fading dates. Ma rummaged through a chest labeled Family Keepsakes and found a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. I thought these were Nana's, she said, but some are addressed to my dearest W. She sat cross-legged on the floor, reading silently as I held a flashlight. The late afternoon light sliced through the dusty air. This one mentions Rose, she said suddenly. Says, our little one would have been 6 today. Daisy's ears perked up from the hallway. She didn't enter, just sat at the threshold, like a silent guard. We kept reading, letter after letter, some smudged, others crisp, as if sealed yesterday. They painted a picture of a love kept quiet, heartbreak stitched into ordinary days, a man carrying his daughter's memory like a sacred oath. We need to tell Dan, Ma whispered. He has to see this. Uncle Dan drove down from Wisconsin the next day, bringing his usual thermos of hot cider. He listened as Ma read a letter aloud, his jaw tight but silent. When she finished, he exhaled. I always wondered why Pop got so quiet in spring, around April. Now I know. We spent hours laying it all out. Photos, letters, the polished brass, the bonnet now in a glass box. Daisy lay on the rug, content. She led you to this, Dan said, scratching behind her ear. You've got a guardian angel in golden fur. That evening, the house felt different, not haunted, but full, like a melody we'd never noticed had begun to echo in the walls. Ma started writing, not just notes, but stories. Pop's quirks, Granddad Walter's habits, Nana's recipes no one had recorded. I helped type them after supper, with Daisy sprawled under the table and the scent of chamomile tea in the air. We created a family book, a simple binder with plastic sleeves, each story paired with a photo or letter. We called it the Heritage Nook and placed it on the shelf beside the box. Word spread. Cousins called. Some sent letters or trinkets. Old stories about Walter and Clara surfaced, pieces of a puzzle no one had connected. A neighbor mailed a black and white photo of a young woman holding a baby, labeled Spring 1947. Ma gasped. That's Clara. I'd know those eyes anywhere. The photo found a frame next to Daisy's. Then, one morning, Daisy refused to come inside. She sat at the yard's edge, nose pointed toward the woods behind our house. She barked once, then again. I walked over, bundled in my jacket. "What's up, girl?" She didn't budge, just barked and looked at me. "What do you see?" She trotted toward the trees. I followed. She led me to where the forest began, where the brush thinned to reveal a faint, overgrown trail I'd never noticed. It was old but clear. After a few minutes, we found it. A small, worn stone, half sunk into the earth, with Rose C. Hart carved on top. No dates, just her name. Daisy sat beside it, still. I knelt and brushed the dirt away, revealing a faint flower carving, perhaps a lily. "You brought us here too, didn't you?" I whispered. Daisy huffed quietly and leaned into me. "We told Ma, then Dan, then the family. No one knew the stone was there. No one recalled that trail. We cleaned the area, left fresh flowers weekly, and built a small bench nearby. Ma started sitting there on weekends with her tea, talking to the past, saying it felt like it listened. Daisy never pawed at another mirror or led us down paths again. She lived happily, peacefully, but every time we passed that spot, she'd pause, sit briefly, then move on, like paying respects or checking in. Whatever it was, we followed her lead. The next spring came early, March warming faster than usual, melting snow before St. Patrick's Day. Apple trees on Main Street burst into pink and white, and our backyard, usually muddy until April, was dry enough for Daisy to run without dragging in dirt. The house felt lighter, not just warmer. One Saturday, Ma came downstairs holding a yellowed envelope, sealed and marked in bold cursive, "To be opened if you find her." "It was in the attic papers," she said, voice tight. I missed it, tucked behind another letter. "I think it's from Clara." We sat on the couch, sunlight streaming in, birds chirping outside. Daisy settled before us, head tilted, as if sensing the moment's weight. Ma opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single letter, faded but legible, addressed not to Granddad Walter, but to the family. It read, "If you found this, you found her, my Rose. I don't know how or when, but I believed you would. There are things I couldn't say in my lifetime, not for shame, but for peace. Walter loved her, loved me, but the war made everything fragile, and he had duties. I left her resting place near the old trail, under wild lily trees, the only gift I could give, peace and privacy. She knew only love, never pain. If this reaches you, tell her story. Let her be known." Ma's voice shook as she read the final line. "Let her be known." We sat in silence, the letter a bridge across decades. Daisy, usually restless in the day, was still. I wondered if she understood what we were unraveling. Later that week, Ma contacted the local historical society and the town records office to register Rose's grave officially. Sarah, a kind woman at the office, said she'd investigate. A week later, she called back. "No death certificate for a Rose Hart in this county, but there's a hospital record of a stillborn girl, April 1947, to Clara M. Hart, father unknown. Can we list her officially?" Ma asked. "It'll take work, but we'll try," Sarah said. "Talk to the county registrar. We'll help however we can." Ma hung up and looked at me. "We're giving her a name again, not just on a rock, but in the records." The next days blurred with paperwork, calls, and scanned documents. Uncle Dan sent statements. Victor Hale emailed a signed letter confirming Clara's story, and Nana wrote a brief, graceful note. Ma took on the task with purpose, spending every spare moment on it. Evenings became a routine. Supper, tea, papers spread across the dining table, Daisy nearby like a furry assistant. Then the local paper reached out. "We heard you're documenting a historical burial site," said Nathan, a young reporter. "Would you share the story?" Ma hesitated. This isn't for attention. Of course, he said. But it could help other families with unrecorded histories, forgotten children. We'd write it respectfully. She agreed cautiously. The article ran the following Sunday, front page of the community section. Family Dog uncovers lost chapter of local history. It described Daisy, the box, the letters, the grave. Not every detail, but enough to spark something. Over the next month, strangers sent letters. Some included photos, saying they might have known Clara from nearby towns. Others shared stories of lost relatives, hidden adoptions, buried secrets. One letter stood out, from Abigail in Fort Wayne. Her mother had spoken of a young woman named Clara who lived with them briefly in the late 1940s, with auburn hair and spring-like eyes. She left one April night, said she needed to find peace. Abigail wrote. We sent her copies of the letters and a photo of the grave. She replied with memories and a pair of silver earrings with lily carvings, left by Clara. They were her daughter's flower, she wrote. Now I know why. We placed the earrings beside the box, turning that corner of our home into something sacred. One Saturday, we held a small gathering at Rose's grave. Not a ceremony, just family, neighbors, and those who'd helped. Sarah and Nathan attended, and Abigail's granddaughter brought fresh lilies. Ma told Clara and Rose's story, reading Clara's letter aloud. No one spoke. Only the breeze and birds sounded. We each placed a lily on the grave. Daisy stood by me, calm as ever. As people left, an older man lingered. George Pike, Clara's cousin, had seen the article and driven from Illinois. I hadn't seen her since I was 12, he said. She was kind, taught me to tie a tie. My folks called her a disgrace, but I never believed it. He handed Ma folded paper, a poem Clara carried. Bury me not in stone so grand, but under trees in soft green land. Let lilies grow where I once lay, and love, remember me that way. Ma framed it beside the earrings. That night, she cried, not from grief, but something softer. By the fire, with Daisy at our feet and the air smelling of wood smoke and lavender, I said, It's wild that this started with a dog pawing a glass. Ma nodded. Sometimes answers come in fur and four paws. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Does Daisy know, like really know? Ma looked at her, blinking up with that steady gaze. She knows enough, and I think she's got more to show us. I didn't fully understand then, but I would soon, because Daisy's journey wasn't done. Summer arrived like a long exhale, sunlight lingering late, casting golden slants through our kitchen windows. Daisy sprawled on the porch, nose twitching at every breeze. Life felt settled, like we'd come full circle. But with Daisy, there was always more. It started on a Tuesday. I was home early from school for a teacher training day and decided to clean the garage. Daisy followed, tail swaying, sniffing every box I touched. A storm was forecast for that night, the air heavy with an eerie calm. In the garage's far corner was Granddad Walter's old pine chest, moved there during a kitchen remodel and forgotten. I'd assumed it held tools or wires, but Daisy's persistent nosing made me curious. I opened it. The top layer was mundane, old cords, worn gloves, a broken umbrella, but beneath, under a folded military jacket, was a cracked leather-bound notebook. I sat on an overturned bucket and read. It was Granddad's journal, not daily entries, but scattered thoughts. Some were ordinary, weather, town gossip, fishing trips, but others were raw, almost poetic. One read, I see her in dreams, Clara by the river, holding Rose. I want to join them, but I promise to stay, to keep the peace. Peace is a quiet ache you carry. Another, 2 weeks before his death, was brief. If anyone finds this, tell her story. Let them know. Let her be real again. I ran my fingers over the ink, wishing I could ask him the questions he'd carried. Daisy rested her chin on my foot, watching. Ma cried when I showed her, reading each word like a final talk with her father. That night, the storm hit hard, thunder rattling windows, rain lashing the house. We sat in the living room, power flickering, candles glowing. Daisy wasn't scared, just watched the windows, alert, like expecting someone. When the power died, we talked about Granddad, Clara, and how much had changed because Daisy wouldn't stop scratching that glass. What if there's more? Ma asked suddenly. Not just journals, but things we're meant to find. She wasn't wrong. The next week, Nathan, the reporter, shared the journal with the town's small museum. They wanted to create an exhibit honoring local history. Can we display some items? Curator Miss Langley asked. The brass, letters, maybe a photo? We agreed, lending the first letter, Clara's photo with Rose, and a framed copy of the Lily poem. Daisy's picture sat front and center. The exhibit drew more visitors than expected, people from nearby towns, even farther. A man in his 70s said, "I served with Walter." Quiet, but good. Kids stared at the photos like peering into another era. Daisy came on the first day, sitting patiently outside while people streamed in. She didn't bark, just sat like on duty. That evening, as we packed up, a woman approached, in her 50s, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a visitor lanyard. "I saw the exhibit," she said softly. "The name Rose means something to me." She thought her mother might have known or been related to Clara. Seeing her picture, it's like seeing my aunt. Her name was Lillian, raised in foster care after her mother's early death. She'd found letters in a box labeled "Do Not Open," signed CM, mentioning a baby girl. "I thought it was my mom's fiction," she said. "But now I wonder if she was Clara's niece, maybe Rose's cousin." We exchanged numbers, promising to follow up. Daisy sniffed her hand gently, then lay by her feet, like she'd always known her. Back home, we added Lillian's name to the family tree taped to the dining room wall. It sprawled now, not fancy, just growing with each name. That fall, Daisy slowed down. At 7, she was healthy but slept more, watched us with a quiet intensity. One night, I found her sitting where the mirror once hung, not pawing, just watching, head tilted, eyes calm. I sat beside her. "There's more, isn't there?" She blinked slowly. That weekend, Ma suggested a trip a few hours south to a town where Clara might have lived in the early 1950s, based on a cryptic letter. We rented a cabin, Daisy in tow. The town was quiet, nestled in tree-covered hills. At the library, an elderly clerk helped us scour registry books. We found Clara M. Hart rented a room above a diner for 6 months in 1952. The diner was gone, but the building was now an antique shop. Daisy led us to the door, sniffed, circled, and sat firmly. The shopkeeper listened to our story, then fetched a small wooden box from the attic, found during renovations, with CMH carved inside. "I kept it because it was pretty," he said. "Maybe it's yours." Inside was a pressed lily and a rough drawing of a woman, man, and baby, the love clear in the lines. Daisy sniffed it gently, resting her chin on the box. We brought it home, placing it on the shelf. It wasn't just about a box or letters. It was about connection, listening when someone, human or not, shows you something vital. Daisy wasn't done teaching us. She started sleeping near Pop's old armchair in the den, a sturdy chair unmoved since his passing. At first, we thought she was just aging, picking quiet spots, but she kept pressing her nose into the cushion, sniffing the seams, then looking at us, tail wagging once, deliberate, like saying, "Look here." Ma finally said, "Maybe there's something under the cushion." I lifted it. Crumbs, a dime, but then a bulge under the seat's lining. I peeled it back, revealing a cloth pouch with a pocket-sized notebook, Pop's name in neat letters. Each page held brief thoughts. Daisy knows when I'm hurting, lies beside me like she's holding me together. I dreamed of my father, younger, smiling, saying, "You're closer than you think." What did he mean? Sometimes I hear music in the corridor, faint, like a lullaby. I look, and Daisy's by the glass, watching. The last entry, 2 days before Pop died, read, "If Daisy leads you somewhere, follow. She knows where the truth lies." We sat, the clock ticking loudly, Daisy curled by the armchair. "How did we miss this?" I asked. "We weren't ready," Ma said. "We began seeing the house differently, like it held layers of memory." Cleaning the linen closet, I found a photo of Pop as a teenager with a girl I didn't know, a note on the back. "To Will Jr., for the summer we never forgot. M." Ma recognized her. "That's Margaret, the neighbor's daughter." They were close. We called Uncle Dan, who confirmed Pop and Margaret were like twins, never romantic, just bonded. "She's in Lafayette now," he said. "Want me to reach out?" 2 days later, Margaret wanted to meet. We drove to Lafayette on a sunny Saturday, her white house blooming with flowers. "You look like him," she told me, same thoughtful eyes. In her cozy living room, she handed Ma a sealed envelope. "Walter gave this to me before he died, for Will Jr. if he needed answers. He passed too soon. Now it's yours." Granddad's letter read, "My son, I made choices that left gaps in your story. I never stopped loving you or your mother, but I loved others quietly. Clara, Rose, my child as you are. 2 lives, 1 heart. If you're reading this, I hope Daisy led you. Tell the truth, even late. Love, Dad." Ma read it, voice trembling. Margaret wiped her eyes. Walter was complicated, but he wanted the truth to live. We left her with a photo of Rose's grave, promising to return. Daisy rode home, head out the window, content. The letter joined the others, another link in memory's chain. We started a digital family archive, letters, photos, journals, Uncle Dan, Abigail, Lillian, and Nathan helping. Daisy stayed close, watching. One night, by the fireplace, I said, "You knew it all, didn't you?" She leaned against me, her answer in her warmth. October brought fiery leaves, reds, oranges, yellows. Daisy rolled in them like a pup. A year since the mirror, we were still unraveling her thread. It led to the shed, and used, moss-covered. I went out after hearing a thump, thinking a raccoon got in. Daisy stopped at the door, whining, nose at the bottom. I unlocked it, the hinges groaning, dust swirling in the sunlight. Daisy darted to the left corner, behind a folded table, and sat, staring at the wall. I pressed it. A panel gave way, revealing a metal tin. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were dog tags, a fire department badge from Michigan, bound postcards, and a small folded flag. The tags and badge read Henry J. Carver, a name we didn't know. The postcards, from 1951 to 1954, were addressed to CM, the handwriting unfamiliar. One, from 1952, read, "Still dreaming of Indiana skies. Hope the lily trees bloom. Right when you can. Yours, H." We sat on the porch swing, the tin between us, Daisy on the steps. "This isn't Granddad or Clara," Ma said. "Why hide it here?" We called Lillian, reading her the name. "Henry Carver was my grandfather," she said. "Clara confided in him after leaving town. She called him Hank. She visited that weekend with her mother's journal, photos, and a letter mentioning Clara and Rose. The journal described visits to a lake, silent days with Clara, letters to a northern fireman. They were in love, Lillian said, but never stayed in one place long. She was waiting for the right time. We placed the badge and postcards beside Clara's letters, the tin by Rose's bonnet. That night, Daisy lay by the fireplace, tail thumping lazily. "Did you know this too?" I asked. She blinked, proud. November brought early frost. Daisy sat one morning where the mirror had been, silent, watching. I sat with her. She trotted to my room, sitting by my desk's bottom drawer. Inside, under old homework, was a drawing I'd forgotten, a lily tree with Daisy beneath it, matching the ones by Rose's grave. It felt like her nudge. We visited the grave that weekend, bringing tea and a book. Daisy sniffed a tree stump, then sat, waiting. We cleared the soil behind it, finding a water-stained wooden box 6 inches down. Inside was a silver lily brooch and a wax-sealed letter from Clara. "To whoever finds this, this is my final gift. I leave no riches, only memory. Tell Rose's story, not as tragedy, but a song. She lived in the hearts of those who knew her, even briefly. Love is sometimes a quiet blooming in the woods. Thank you for bringing her back, Clara." We cried, not from sadness, but a circle closing. Daisy sat calmly. Back home, the brooch joined the shelf, now a living timeline. That winter, we held a museum event, a remembrance where families shared stories of lost kin. Daisy sat near the front, overseeing. Later, I tucked her into her blanket, whispering, "Is there more?" Her knowing gaze said, "Keep listening." The new year brought quiet snow, dusting the town. The museum's exhibit stayed up, a laminated sign telling Daisy's story. At home, she grew introspective, watching snowfall for hours, sitting by the back door, waiting for a sign only she sensed. One morning, Ma sorted Christmas cards, some from neighbors, others from exhibit connections. Margaret's included a photo of her grandkid with a lily ornament. But one card, with no return address, held a sepia-toned photo of children at a schoolhouse, labeled Class of '51. "Find her." Ma recognized Clara's smile. We emailed the Historical Society and posted to a genealogy board. Leonard, a retired history teacher, responded. His archive confirmed the schoolhouse, 8 miles west, and a roster listing Clara Hart, grade 6, living with her aunt and uncle, the Fords. We visited Leonard in the snowy hills, his home a maze of files. Clara was quiet, he said. Transferred in, left the next year. We tracked the Fords' house, now a llama sanctuary. The owners found Clara's items in their attic. Notebooks with flower doodles, unsent letters to H, a journal page. I dreamed of Rose, older, laughing in lilies. I didn't want to wake. Daisy sat by the box, alert. "She knows," the owner said. We borrowed the boxes, digitizing everything. Ma read the letters, murmuring, they were in love, even apart. The journal page joined the brooch and earrings, a memorial to Clara. That week, snow deepened. Daisy slowed, barely lifting her head one morning. The vet said it was age. Ma brought home cassette tapes from a church friend, recordings of old events. In one, labeled Maple Road Sunday 1953, Clara's voice spoke. "Let us remember those we've lost, not with sorrow, but gratitude. Their love remains in wind, trees, song, silence." We played it nightly, a ritual like lighting a candle. Daisy sat by the old mirror spot, focused. We placed a framed photo of Rose's grave there, with Clara's poem and a pressed lily. January brought more stories. Descendants, caretakers, a mail carrier recalling Clara's 1960s letters. Each added to the picture. Ma started Letters from the Glass, a book of our findings. I helped scan letters. Abigail proofread. Nathan wrote a foreword. The museum planned a launch. By March, lily trees budded early. Daisy sat beneath one, looking older but proud, like she'd finished a task. Did we do it right? I asked her. She didn't answer, but her eyes said, "Keep going." April was rainy, the manuscript nearly done. Daisy moved slower, resting more, but stayed near for every meaningful moment. One day, a package arrived. No cinder, a green shoebox with a cassette and a note. Play me. We did. A woman, Esther, Clara's nurse, spoke. Clara wanted her real story told, not just in letters. She spoke of Rose, Walter, lily trees, a love written in pieces. Secrets protect, but isolate. Tell them I remembered, forgave, never stopped watching over her. We transcribed it as the book's final chapter. Nathan called. The museum heard talk of a documentary. Ma hesitated but met Rachel, a filmmaker who saw it as a story of family, memory, quiet voices. They filmed over 3 weekends. Ma at the museum, me reading Clara's poem, Dan on the trail, recreating the glass day. Rachel asked, "What does Daisy see in that corridor spot?" Ma smiled. She sees the past, the people we forgot, waiting for us to remember. A letter from Nevada brought a 1954 photo of Margaret with a toddler. Ellie, signed K. We added it to the tree, now covering the dining room wall. Visitors traced its branches, whispering names. Simon, a fire station colleague of Henry Carver, brought a photo of Walter's retriever, like Daisy, waiting at the station. We placed it above her bed, a legacy within a legacy. A boy, Eli, visited, shy until he saw Daisy. He hugged her, whispering, "She's like the dog in my dreams," leading me to a box under a flower tree. His drawing of Daisy and a lily tree hung by the family tree. That night, watching her sleep, I knew this wasn't just memory, it was what came next. Daisy already knew the way. Her last spring began with early blooming lily trees, the house warm with muffin smells and sunlight. Letters from the Glass was ready, a project spanning decades, uniting strangers. Daisy slept with her head in my lap, breathing slower. One morning, she sat where the mirror once hung, calm, waiting for light to shift. I sat with her, feeling peace. Margaret sent a story, The Girl Who Lived in Lilies, about Rose wandering woods, led home by a golden dog, seeing loved ones in a glass. We added it to the book. The launch was May's second Saturday. We set out lemonade, cookies, and display copies. Daisy on a cushion with lilies and Pop's shirt. Neighbors, friends, and letter senders came. The corridor hummed. Children pointed at Daisy's photo. Rachel showed a documentary preview. Daisy under a blooming tree, breeze in her fur. After, we sat with tea. Dan lit a candle, Daisy by the shelf. We told them all. "Girl," I said, scratching her ear. Her tail thumped softly. The next morning, she didn't come when called, curled by the lily photo, breathing shallow. The vet came. Daisy was peaceful, passing that afternoon in Pop's shirt, my hand on her heart. We buried her under the lily tree where it began, the museum donating a plaque. Daisy, the one who remembered. The town came to her memorial, bringing flowers, photos, stories. Rachel added it to the film with a title card for Daisy, who showed us how to listen. The book sold modestly, used in schools, featured in libraries. Families started their own history projects. Every spring, we visit the tree, leaving lilies, drawings, or silence, saying thank you, not goodbye. Ma bakes Sundays. Dan writes to new kin. I study history in walls and attics, the tap of a dog's paw on glass. The corridor stays bare but full, and sometimes, in the wind, I hear Daisy's nails, her tail brushing, her breath warm. We weren't meant to keep everything, just what matters, what guides us back. Daisy found it all.